Good afternoon, boys and girls. Welcome to an impromptu episode of Touchy Subjects. It's only a Lime Live. We're here with Mark Mantovani. I guess what would be the proper title to call you right now? You would be the county executive elect, possibly?
No,
Candidate?
I'm a candidate.
County executive candidate. You need to.
That's as far as I can take it right
That's
now.
as far as you can take it right now. That's your associated title.
Yeah.
And there you go. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, sure, Brock. I guess the important things are that I'm a St. Louis guy. I grew up in Afton. Spent a lot of time in Lime. I've talked before. I grew up essentially between Afton and Heine Field. Played a lot of ball in Lime and a lot of basketball in Lime at Bayless High School back in the day, and I ended up going to law school. I went to Mizzou Law School and I actually went to business school after law school and was in business for a number of years. Practiced law for 15 years, took over a business in St. Louis, had been a law client of mine, a little marketing services business that we kind of got lucky with. The business grew a lot, and I ended up running that business for about 15 years. It grew from about 50 employees to about 800 while I was running it, and I ended up getting involved in a lot of civic matters while I was helping to grow that business. And when I left the business, I decided to try to help St. Louis, my hometown. Like a lot of people, I've been frustrated with the trajectory of the region for many years. We have lost our way, in my opinion. When I was a kid, St. Louis was kind of a happening spot. It was the 10th biggest city in America. The region was the 10th largest metropolitan area in America. Our peer cities were places like Boston and San Francisco and Philadelphia and whatnot. And now today we look around and we're having a hard time keeping up with Nashville and Louisville and Indianapolis, places that I used to think of were minor league cities. And so I've thought and studied on this a lot and have some perspective on what I think has caused us to decline. The decline affects everybody in many respects. We're having a hard time retaining our young people. Even people who are affluent in this community, their kids are leaving because they're finding other jobs in other cities. They're going to Denver or to Austin or to Nashville again, and we've left so many people behind from an economic standpoint whose lives have not achieved the quality that they probably should. And so anyway, I think a lot about this stuff, and I was asked by a number of different people from across the community, both sides of the political spectrum, actually, if I would consider running for office. I had imagined later in life I would be involved on a charitable basis and whatnot, and I was asked to consider running for office. And at the end of the day, my wife and I weighed this heavily and decided that this service to the community was something that we wanted to pursue.
That's a good thing because I'll agree with you. I think that our county, as well as our city, has at worst or at best gone stagnant. We haven't seen a lot of growth or development or just moves in the right direction in general in the St. Louis area in quite a while. And our city needs help, and I think we need fresh faces and fresh ideas and fresh legislation in the area. Fresh people, fresh faces would be one of my biggest thing. So I wanted to come out here and give you an opportunity to kind of get to know the people. District 6 is the district that most of our viewers are in. That's Ernie Trachis. Ernie's a great guy, in my opinion. Obviously, at this level, everybody's got their own opinions. But I think we need to make a move. I'm not a very big fan of Steve Stanger at all. And I'm not going to sit here and turn this into a Stanger bashing video. But the whole idea of me doing this was to reach out to you and to reach out to anybody else. Was to get some of this information out here because I don't feel like it's out there enough. I feel like we've all seen videos or commercials, that kind of following the typical political commercials with some mudslingings and things like that. And that obviously I thought that I'd come out here and maybe give you a chance to say things other than like maybe who you voted for or because those things are irrelevant really in the big picture to me. I'm hoping that they become more relevant to people in the future because I'd like to know what your like pros and cons are or what your actual what you're bringing to the table as opposed to what your party affiliation is or any of those kind of ridiculous-minded arguments that we've simplified politics to be these days.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot there. So let me jump in with a couple of quick thoughts. First of all, going back to your initial premise of your question was around stagnation, and I don't know if you know exactly how exactly right that is. Our population as a region hasn't really changed much, really since like the 50s. The problem is that the rest of the country is growing, and our population base and our economic base have stayed stagnant. And so, as a consequence, we're being left behind. I read recently that if our population had just kept pace with the rest of the country growth from 1970, instead of 2.8 million people, we'd have 4.4. Right? This would be a very different place if we had a region of 4.4 million people. There'd be a lot more economic vitality and a lot more kind of business being generated internally and whatnot. And so that stagnation is really in the middle of what has caused our what I call relative decline because other places are passing us up. All right, so look, let me talk a little bit about myself and this campaign and whatnot. I didn't start this political campaign because of Steve Stenger either. Okay, as I said, I have been frustrated with the fact that the community isn't keeping up with the rest of the country. Sometimes you can almost tell whether somebody travels much or stays in St. Louis most of their life, most of their time, by how they feel about how the community is performing. Those of us who travel or have traveled for our work or whatnot, in many cases have a different sense about what's going on in the rest of the country than some of us who don't travel, for example. And again, that gets back to the kind of different rates of change that we have in our community. So anyway, I had made this decision to run because of my concern about the community. Look, I got 3 grown kids here. I got 8 grandkids here.
The future's important.
It's damn important, and it also irks the hell out of me that this region that I used to think had a real vitality to it can't keep up. When I was a kid, there was a lot of amazing stuff happening in this part of the country. The space program was. Houston got all the credit, but as a practical matter, McDonnell Douglas and General Dynamics, they were building more of that equipment than any place in the country. We were very much in the middle of all that, and when I was a kid, the Arch was getting built, and the football Cardinals came here, and the Blues came here. I mean, it was a place that still felt like we were convening positive growth. And today, we have lost... we've lost sports teams, we've missed opportunities, we can't compete for Amazon competitions, we've had horrible racial and regional divides within the region, and we have a leadership class that I think just wants to keep control and just doesn't particularly care about helping this place achieve its potential. I don't hear our leaders talk about the racial and regional divide that we have very much. I hear them talk about stuff like, "Hey, let's build an ice rink," as if that is consequential in terms of us achieving our potential. They're very transactional,
Not only let's build an ice rink, but let's build an ice rink in an area that pretty much has pretty good accommodations for the residents in the community around it already.
Yeah, so, no kidding. Yeah, exactly right. And by the way, let's give these the Blues a park property. To build that ice rink when we've got places like Crestwood Plaza or where a lot of your friends live, in the kind of southeast part of the region, where we need real vitality. All right, it's preposterous to me. All right, and unacceptable. All right, so our leadership, in my view, has failed us. And to the extent that I can bring a different kind of energy and experience to public service, I want to do that.
Well, it gets me excited because from the outside looking in, from my perspective, just to give you my perspective, I feel like what's happening is some of the powers that be, or the people in positions of power now, are simply making their areas better, or their surrounding areas better, or maybe even their friends' areas better. It's more of like a business as usual kind of thing to me. I thought the idea was actually to improve the areas that were falling behind, to try to keep up the area consistently, as opposed to having,
Well, totally.
really affluent neighborhoods, as opposed to, because we've got a real divide going on, and that's hard to deny.
That is so totally right. I was a businessman for the last 15 plus years of my career, and if I had a business that had a division that was struggling, that division would command a disproportionate amount of my attention, not less.
Right.
Right? What we do in this community is we have so many haves and have-nots, and the powers that be just hang out with the haves.
Absolutely.
And they blow off the rest of the community. And this isn't only true in Lima. I mean, this is true in North St. Louis County, right? It's true across the region. And it's baloney, right? We can't achieve our potential as a community if we keep ignoring places that need help, need investment, need engagement and whatnot. And even when there is the potential, as there was with the casino in Lima, it's very much let's give as little as we can get by with and move on.
Yeah, I mean, because with that situation, that whole deal with Lima is we talked about that in our previous meeting. Unfortunately, there's not really a lot that we can, at least that I know or that I'm aware of, that we can do at this point to remedy that issue. So I'm trying to look to other ways that we can go ahead and sort of round out the area, because in Lima and District 6 as a whole, I think most of us feel left out. Our neighborhoods really, and I can't tell you exactly what that is, whether it's the powers that be, whether it's the voting, whether it's us not participating enough. I don't know the exact formula, but I do know that a lot of us in the South County District 6 area feel left out. We feel ignored. We feel looked over. And obviously we're looking for a guy who's going to show a little bit more interest and we're not asking for the spotlight to be shown exclusively on us. We're just asking for us to get our fair share of representation and growth and everything else that we're talking about here.
Like I said, if you don't create investment opportunity, you're not going to enhance the quality of life in those communities.
Absolutely. So. All right,
excuse me.
Before we, just drone on about this, because we've.
You did you want me to talk about my voting history and that kind of stuff, or did you not?
To be honest with you, I don't want to talk about the voting history because I think that is probably the least most important thing that we could talk about here. I personally don't. I mean, maybe everybody else is, but I'd really like to move at least the people that are listening to this, or the people who are letting eyes fall on this, away from such simple ideas as voting based on political party, because that drives me nuts. It's a division tactic to me. It's just another thing to keep people arguing, because I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. I think that your ideas should probably fluctuate and change based on the subject matter. You can't just be a Democrat all the way across the board. If you were to sit here and tell me right now that you were a Democrat across the board and that you would never stray from the Democratic ideas or the liberal ideas, then you would reduce your luster to me.
Credibility.
Yes, absolutely, because then it just shows me it's more business as usual. I would like to see the independent party start to pick up speed. I don't even want to call it a party. I would just like to see more people sporting an eye, as opposed to claiming allegiance. And I understand why in politics this has to happen, because at this point it's become such a clear-cut two-team system that everybody else is on the outside looking in. When you talk to people about the presidential election, people will tell you a lot of times that they voted for this person because they didn't want to vote for the other person. And that to me is a total farce of the system. It's not how it's supposed to work. We need the best and the brightest and I've been arguing this a long time, that I really don't feel like we've been given the right choices in just about every aspect of politics.
Yeah.
We're not getting the best. We're not getting the most moral. We're not getting the most the people with the humanitarian ideas. We're getting, no offense as a businessman, but we're getting. I actually heard people say that they encouraged voting for the president because they wanted the country to be ran like a business. And I don't really know if people realize this or not, but when you run a business, you're looking to maximize profits and minimize loss. And that doesn't always coincide with morals or humanity.
Yeah.
I
I think what they're saying there is they want it to be run efficiently and less. We don't have to have that discussion, but
that's great.
I don't think they're thinking in terms of profitability. I think that when they say a business person's experiences might be relevant, their thought is that they'll be more mindful of efficiency and not wasting dough as much.
I would agree with you, except
right.
that historically speaking, the budgets haven't really changed that much. I mean, we still spend.
On the contrary,
we just keep adding to it.
The federal deficit went up. Actually, I believe more with Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush's administrations than they did actually with.
These are the huge tax cutters. These are the
that's right.
These are the huge budget biters, and no, exactly. So that's the problem. We could obviously this conversation could stem and it could go for hours and probably days. I worry because I think that America, to me, what it represents to me is that we lead the world in. I don't want to use the wrong word, because if I use the wrong word, it makes us seem just too. I think we've been the country that does the right thing. Like if you look at the history books, and if you look at the past, most of the wars that we fought were for good ideas. That's the agenda that we were served anyway. Is that we're doing this for humanitarian purposes. We want democracy. We want things to be done the right way, and we don't want to make choices for you, but. We want you to be able to make choices and not be persecuted or treated wrongly based on somebody else's ideology or what they believe in. So I think that what we did was we led the world in being kind of the acceptors. We don't care what your background is or what your nationality is or what your religion is. You can come here and be treated as equals. That's a humanitarian thing to me, and that's where we've kind of led the world. We don't want to see people hurt. We don't want to see people suffer, especially not if we can do anything about it. And I think that we're starting to kind of move away from that, and it worries me. So whenever somebody says something to me about having a person that runs a country like a business, that would be fine if we could actually cut down some of our fatty spending, which we know there's no shortage of. But that doesn't really happen. At this point, I'm worried about just having the morally sound people.
Yeah. The fact is, running a business and running a government are two wholly separate and different kinds of activities.
Absolutely.
Right? And so we're going to be well. Right?
Okay.
So sorry about that.
Sorry.
The point that I was making about running a business and running a government is that they're very different functions. Now, leadership has consistency.
Sure.
Some people know how to lead. Some people don't. Some people know how to get along with people. Some people don't. I'm not going to make any.
No.
I'm not going to mention any names.
I don't think you have to.
All right. But the running of a business and the running of a government are very different things. I spent a year studying government before I started this process, just to kind of crystallize my thinking about those differences, so that I don't fall into the trap of thinking because I was a successful business guy I know how to run a government, because they're very different things.
Well, across government we talk mostly about our rights, and those rights are your rights as an American citizen, and that's the things that we're trying to protect and keep the same.
Right. The other thing that's so incredibly different is that government is by definition established with checks and balances. There are other branches of government that have responsibilities to block you. If you're a CEO, especially of a privately held company, you've got to manage your board, but you have a lot more control.
Control, absolutely.
Right? And
you sort of remove your feelings away from business, because that's really you almost have to in today's world too. If you're going to be profit driven, you can't really always make the heartfelt move.
I don't know. Maybe not always. I don't think that you can always do anything, but I never forgot that the business didn't exist just for me or the owners, but it existed for the employees too.
I think that's a rare find, though, Mark. I really do.
Well, maybe, but I mean, look, there's no point in running something if, by virtue of running something, you lose your soul. You turn into somebody who doesn't care about other people. The fun thing about leadership is being able to serve other people, help other people. And so I wasn't perfect at it, I mean, I think in the 15 years that I ran the business, we had maybe, I can't say two, I know we had one layoff, okay, of like 20 people when in like the recession when the economy was really bad. But I mean, I cut my own pay before I laid people off.
It's admirable.
To
me, it's admirable because you just don't see it anymore, and that's the problem. That's whenever I say that I don't want the country to be ran like a business. Those are the things I want to be.
But these are the things that are exciting about running something is doing it the right way. I mean, you can make money doing a lot of stuff, but doing it the right way is what makes it challenging and kind of stimulating.
Sure.
I mean, you can run a government. You can run a government by getting in fights with the county council and by dictating stuff and coercing people. You can do it,
sure.
right? But that's just not the right way to do stuff,
no.
right? And the challenge in life isn't just the outcome; it's the outcome the right way,
sure.
in my view, right?
Yeah.
And so, again, I'm not trying to make this a campaign deal, really. I'm really not, right? But the contrasts are so clear. I get letters from people who work in the county government every day, or I get stopped on the street. People say, "You got to win, please. We haven't had a raise for 10 years, and he's never introduced himself to us, and he's the worst manager, And the people who work for me would run through a wall for me. Okay. Generally speaking, I mean, somebody might be able to find somebody who didn't like something.
Sure.
Okay, but generally speaking, they are very loyal, and it was because I was loyal to them. I mean, I thought I was working for them. I never thought they were working for me. Yeah. That's that servant leadership deal, okay? And
that's what we need.
And it's the only way that I care really about.
Well, and you know what? It's a good thing you said that. It really strikes a chord with me because I think that that's the only way that the government works. Also, is if it's servant leadership, because that's literally what the definition of our government is.
Exactly.
You're serving the people. You're representing the people. You're the people's voice. You're the representative of us. Your job is actually to serve us in the best way that you can.
I get people say to me now, so now that you've become a politician, and I got to tell you, it makes me want to throw up.
Sure. Right? It's like a dirty word.
Well, because I don't aspire to that.
Right.
I aspire to being a public servant. I don't aspire to being a politician. Now, one could argue, if one was smarter, you could argue, hey, man, you got to be, all right? You got to manage politics, all right? I just want to help the community get better. And I think by being honest, letting people know what's going on, transparent, and serving people, we'll solve more problems that way.
I think so too.
For an old guy, I'm a little more idealistic than the next guy is.
Yeah.
A lot of guys, they get to be my age and they're very jaded by life, and my life experiences are just the other way. And again, I don't want to act like I don't want to be holier than thou, because I'm not, right? But I think that when you do stuff with the right motives and you go about it right, that's what's fulfilling about life. I mean, that serving other people gives life meaning. You're serving other people with your communication. This may seem crazy to people. When I was CEO, I was serving those people that were working with me, and I was making sure that they were getting raises and that the company was growing and we were creating more jobs, and it was partly for the owners, partly for myself, but a big part of it was just for the whole community. The business is a community.
Sure.
Anyway, that's kind of what turns me on, is serving like that. So.
Hey, you know what? And I think we need more of that. So thank you for that. We've got some questions from other people out here. I'd love to just sit here and
Great, let's do it. Let's do
and
something.
I'd love to talk with you forever because our conversations to this point have been great. I want to take time real quick to thank you again too because I've reached out to all the other candidates. You're the only really the only response I've gotten is from you. I kind of already knew Steve wasn't going to respond to me, and then I can't even remember his name now. Paul Berry.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard anything back from him. I don't know anything about him, but it goes a long way with me because Ernie was the same guy. Whenever I could talk to a person in an aspiring position like yourself, and he talks to me as an equal, as opposed to
well, it's a big deal for me.
like exalting yourself as something more than just being a person.
It's a big deal for me, not because I have to win votes, but not just because I'm trying to win votes. One of the things I worry about if I am successful and I get elected is how I'm going to be able to continue to communicate with people, all right? Because, sometimes the media wants to manipulate when and how you communicate. And one of the things that's, I think, real important about being executive level leadership in a community is having a lot of communication with people so that they know what you're doing and so that they can weigh in and so that you can hear, right? And that whole communication channel is it worries me a little bit, right? Because I want to get that right. Because I won't do my job well if I can't communicate effectively.
Right.
And communication means speak and listen, and so I love this kind of stuff.
And it seems like a block that we have in our current establishment is that there's really, I would like to say there's neither at this point.
Yeah.
The communication is just at a low, and I don't want to wait until we're at a part where we were as St. Louis, where we were like anybody but dually. Because that's where a lot of St. Louisans finally got tired of it and just said, would vote for anything. And I think that you get in trouble when you start looking for any other alternative aside from the one that you've got. So,
no, I agree.
All right,
let's
we asked questions. We got people who got questions and they got some things they want to ask you. Caleb Caton wants to know what makes you different from other politicians.
Well, I think we talked about some of those things. First of all, I don't want to be a politician. I don't want to run for other office. I'm 64 years old. I'm not trying to have a big fancy political career. I think this job, the county executive job, is the most underutilized job in our community. I think it has great potential to create change, to affect people's lives. And it's always been defined, in my opinion, too narrowly. The change that our community needs requires leadership. And I don't think that the mayor of the city of St. Louis can provide that leadership anymore. For most of my life, I looked to the mayor of the city as the de facto leader of the region. With the population decline in the city, with the fiscal challenges, it's very difficult, I think, for the mayor to create the change regionally that we need. I think that the county executive's office has more potential to create change in this region than any other job. County's got 3 times as many people as the city. It has a budget that is in balance today, given the fact that it's a little dicey, but it's still viable. It has resources to be utilized. Admittedly, a lot of challenges have come into the county over the last 15 years, but I still think that the county executive's job is the best job for creating change in this community. So that's all I want to do is serve the region by being county executive. I don't want to be a politician. I think that's different. I talked about the fact that I view the job as being about service and not about self kind of aggrandizement. I kind of don't need that anymore. I mean, I'm an older guy. I've made a little bit of money. I hope this doesn't sound too conceited, but I kind of don't need that stuff anymore. I kind of just want to work for people.
I don't think it sounds conceited. I think it sounds relieving. So
well, I don't know. I think some people are resentful of guys because they've made it or something like that. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm pretty damn lucky, and I've been blessed. And I just feel like I have a debt to this community. And if I can help us get off the snide here, I think I should do it.
All right, well, we got a big issue coming up here, and I guess it's been moved up to the August 7th ballot, and that's right to work. So a lot of people want to know,
yeah, well,
what is your stance on right to work?
I hope I'm certainly vote against right to work. I think it's a bad idea. This is a really bad time to be thinking about reducing the influence of unions and collective bargaining. In terms of why this is a bad time, it's a bad time because our middle class is in distress. We are becoming polarized with haves and have-nots in this community and across the country. I think that's a very worrisome thing for our nation, generally speaking. The unions and labor movement is generally responsible for having created a middle class. It's not surprising, as we've seen the labor movement kind of lose some influence, that the middle class is shrinking. We need higher wage jobs, and the right to work movement moves in exactly the opposite direction, right? So what we need to do is beat back the right to work movement, make our labor organizations as strong as we can in order to grow that middle class. We don't. Sometimes people joke when I say this. Right now, today in the St. Louis metropolitan area, we have a lot of jobs that are going unfilled. A fellow that I know at senior level of Schnucks told me a few weeks ago that right now Schnucks has 700 jobs that are unfilled. Now they're mostly low-paying jobs, but they have 700 jobs they can't fill. Today, we don't really need jobs like that. What we really need is we need good-paying jobs, right? And so why you would reduce the influence of labor unions when you need higher wages is beyond me. So I certainly will be voting against it. Hope everybody else will too.
I have to. I'm going to restrain myself because I know the answers to those questions. Just to why people would do what they do, and I'm in full agreement with you. Right to work is a bad thing. It just furthers the divide, and the more that we see this pop up in different cities, the further that gap between the almost non-existent middle class is going to become.
This does have economic implications for our region, though, and the county executive doesn't get to make this call, right? We're going to do this on a statewide basis,
sure,
right? Regardless of which way this goes, the county executive's got to figure out a way to grow the economy here. I think there are different strategies, though. If we are not a right to work state, it will be hard, I think, for us to get big manufacturing plants to locate in Missouri. Getting an auto manufacturing plant in Missouri is going to be difficult when we're not a right to work state, because they're going to go to those states. They're going to go to South Carolina. They're going to go to Tennessee. That's where they're going. They're going to go to Texas because they want cheaper labor.
They want higher profits.
That's exactly right. Yes. That's exactly right. But that's reality, right?
Yes.
And the only thing I want everybody to understand is if we are not a right to work state, we've got to concentrate on growing higher paid, higher wage jobs. We've got to have a higher trained workforce. There are things that come with this, right? And what you can't do is you can't say, okay, we're not going to be a right to work state, but then we're going to throw all of our leaders out because the plants are going to South Carolina, right? These are economic consequences to these decisions.
Absolutely.
I'm voting against it because I want to have a strong middle class and I want to have wage growth, okay? And that's the kind of economy I want to run, right? But there are different paths here that states have taken, and I think we're going to get this right, and we're not going to be a right to work state, but we're going to have to react accordingly, and I don't know if everybody wants to have that conversation sometimes.
I don't think they do. A lot of people are just stuck in the here, the now,
right.
the right now, the single subject, and I think that's where a lot of people fail to look at the big picture, as opposed to just a little tiny dot that we're focused on at the moment. And I'm glad that you brought that, because I really would like to see someone in there that thinks that far ahead, as opposed to just yes or no right now, this issue, and then later on is mad because they now realize that they cut their nose off to spite their face.
Yeah,
if that makes
right.
If I'm using that,
we're going to have to invest in workforce training more, because we're going to have to get people prepared for higher skilled jobs. The statistic is by 2020, which is like tomorrow,
right around the corner.
Two-thirds of our jobs we're going to require post high school training. This is not college. This is technical training and whatnot. if we're not going to be a right to work state, we need to be a leader in workforce training, right? So that employers who are going to pay higher wages bring their jobs here. We can't have crappy schools, no training, and then not be a right to work state. We're going to be out of sync. Okay, so we've got to react to that by getting our workforce to be the most highly trained in America.
Makes sense to me. I'm going to try to scan through here. He is not responsible for legalizing marijuana, so we're not going to bug him about that. How do you feel about all the lost dogs in Lime? What is your plan of action to correct the situation? Not much you can do about that. Welfare reform.
You know what? Well, two things. First of all, on the dog thing, I'm told that our animal shelter in St. Louis County is in a shambles. I alluded to the fact earlier that people from the county government stop me and say, God, things are so messed up, all right? And I've had people from the animal control community stop me and say, he has mismanaged this thing badly. And they're like praying that their dogs don't get loose at night because right now it's not a good situation, right? So a lot of what the county executive is supposed to do is make certain that there are these boards and commissions in these various functions. They're not insignificant things, are working well. Animal shelter is one, health department is one, children's services fund. I mean, these are important things. And right now, many of those boards and commissions, they're half vacant. He hasn't appointed people. The people on the board are vacant, are on expired terms. So that you can fire them if they disagree. If you want my honest opinion, you can vote against Stenger for corruption if you want. The best reason to vote against him is incompetence, right? For a guy who says he's a CPA, it's amazing the basic management decisions that he blows. I mean, whatever. I'll shut up.
All right. Hold on. I had a good one in here. No, he doesn't line up with all that. Just want a good guy. Metrolink expansion, yay or nay?
So for me, the bigger issue on Metrolink is we can talk about expansion, and I'm not going to dodge it, but is we got to fix the crime situation on Metrolink. The system right now is dying financially because ridership is off so much.
Sure.
Right.
People are scared to ride.
They're scared to ride. Right. And the number of riders per day has gone from 48,000 to 40,000 a day, which is creating economic challenges on the system, right? And so this is a preposterous scenario, in my opinion. How we can expect people to get on this thing when they're fearful, and that is nuts. Right now we have 3 different parties responsible for safety on the system: St. Louis County, the city of St. Louis, and then St. Clair County, essentially on the east side. Right now, the people in St. Clair County are doing a pretty good job, right? I think the city thing is kind of moderated. The thing in the county is a mess, right? And I believe we ought to have one police force that manages safety on the whole damn line.
A transit authority of sorts.
Yes, I mean, we have the transit authority. We just don't have the security
right.
on a singular basis. I think this makes no sense. We're always going to have one part of this thing that's doing well, probably, and one part that's not, and people are going to be unsafe